What's going on, guys? Today I'll be doing gender and sexuality as a theme in Hamlet by William Shakespeare. So the women in Hamlet are, according to a critique, drawn in fainter lines than their male counterparts. Now, therefore, the audience is forced to make up its own mind as to the purity, motives, and history of Gertrude and Ophelia. One of the most commonly asked questions is this: did Gertrude begin an affair with Claudius before her husband was murdered, or she didn't do that? So the ghost seems to indicate that she may have, when he refers to Claudius as that incestuous, that adulterate beast. Notice the word adulterate. Now, but we must remember that at the time Shakespeare was writing, adultery could mean any kind of sexual sin, such as incest. So by marrying Gertrude, his late brother's wife, Claudius was certainly committing incest in the eyes of the Elizabethans, who based their view on the Old Testament. However, it is much less certain that Gertrude was guilty of any sin. So it's very important that you guys understand the concepts of religion when relating to the theme of gender and sexuality, and what it means to be incestuous and adulterate as per the ghost's words, if I may, late Hamlet. The role of women in Elizabethan society was complex. On one hand, they were considered intellectually, physically, and socially inferior to men. On the other hand, however, the country was ruled by a powerful and intelligent queen, which is very ironic. And in Hamlet, the prevailing idea of women being less capable than men is to the fore. Now, for instance, the difference in the way Polonius views his son and daughter. That's a very, very clear example of the difference in treatment, right? When giving Laertes some parting advice before the young man leaves for France, Claudius says, "This above all, to thine own self be true." He encourages Laertes to trust his better judgment and believes that if he does, all will be well. However, as soon as Laertes has left and Polonius begins giving advice to Ophelia, the tone of the father changes. He is annoyed that she is seeing Hamlet and he scolds her. "You do not understand yourself so clearly, as it behaves my daughter and your honor." Ophelia is taken aback and admits, "I do not know, my lord, what I should think." Polonius is not willing to allow Ophelia to trust her own judgment, and he tells her, "I'll teach you, think yourself a baby." So the difference in the treatment between men and women is very clear in terms of gender. Now, the men in the play do their best to restrict the women's sexuality. Hamlet's disgust at his mother's sexuality is clear from the outset. He says that Claudius has killed my king and whored my mother. Yes, that is what you think it means. And furious with his mother's betrayal of her late husband by rushing with such dexterity to incestuous sheets, Hamlet announces, "Frailty, thy name is woman." He is revolted at the thought of his mother lying in the rank sweat of an enseamed bed, stewed in corruption, honeying and making love over the nasty sty. When he visits her in her room after the play, Hamlet orders his mother to refrain from sleeping with Claudius again and insists that she must resist all his flattering advances. Disgusted with his mother and extending this to include all women, Hamlet turns his anger now on the other woman, Ophelia, tearing her with the same brush as Gertrude. As they prepare to watch the play, he asks, "Lady, shall I lie in your lap?" And Ophelia is placed in an impossible position when Hamlet talks crudely to her. If she is offended, it proves that she knows more of sexual matters than a pure young maiden should. But if she does not acknowledge it, she must suffer in silence as Hamlet continues to taunt her very hard. A popular belief in Elizabethan times was that once a woman had sex, particularly outside of marriage, she would become vulnerable to promiscuity and hysteria. Whatever, some critics have linked Ophelia's madness and crude songs in Act 4, Scene 5 with possible sexual hysteria, which is retarded in my opinion, saying it shows that she had slept with Hamlet and that it is part of the reason for her behavior. So, at the time, it was thought that such women were likely to cheat on their husbands and make cuckolds or monsters of them. Hamlet accuses Ophelia of being such a woman when he advises her to marry a fool, for wise men know well enough what monsters you make of them. Now, Laertes and Polonius are similarly obsessed with women's chastity, but do not hold men to the same standards. Laertes lectures Ophelia about her relationship with Hamlet, claiming that the young prince merely wants to take her chaste treasure and virginity, and cannot possibly intend to marry her. And there is no criticism of Hamlet implied in these words, and Laertes makes it clear that it is up to Ophelia to protect her virtue from the natural urges of young men. Polonius echoes Laertes' fears, saying that Hamlet's vows of love are merely springes to catch woodcocks and cannot be taken seriously. Polonius, like Laertes, does not blame Hamlet for his behavior and tells Ophelia that the prince, being a young man, has a larger tether, good God, and can exercise far more freedom than a young woman. And Polonius reinforces this double standard when telling Reynaldo to spy on Laertes in Paris. He appeared to assume that Laertes will visit prostitutes, but that there is no dishonor in doing so, which is very much hypocritical. Provided it is not excessive. If he doesn't do it too much, then it's fine, which is very much different the way he treats his daughter. Polonius views such drabbing as just one expression of the flash and outbreak of a fairy mind. Gender inequality in the play is not limited only to sexuality and sexual freedom. In Elizabethan society, men acted while women talked. Hamlet's procrastination makes him appear feminine, something which he recognizes when he accuses himself of being alone, or actually being prone to like a whore and pike my heart with grief. Claudius also chides Hamlet for his unmanly grief in mourning his father too deeply and for too long. Hamlet's treatment of women in the play can be seen as a measure of his state of mind, and when he is angry and confused, he turns on them viciously. It could be argued that he has reason to do so, as he has been let down by both his mother and the woman he loves. Now, Gertrude married Claudius soon after her husband's death. When we first meet her, Gertrude shows little real understanding of her son's grief, asking him to cast thy nighted colour off, and tactlessly pointing out that all that live must die, which is basically true, but it's very cruel to tell that to a son, your son, whose father has already just died like a month ago. Ophelia similarly sides with another against Hamlet when she agrees to her father's plan to use her as bait to spy on the prince in Hamlet's time of need. The woman he loves let him down. Basically, this is why he goes bananas, and this hardly excuses his cruel treatment, though, of Ophelia in particular, but it may go somehow towards explaining it. Now, however, when Hamlet is more content with his lot and less troubled, his view of women is far more positive. On the ship to England, at the end, well, almost the end, he outwits Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and this is the beginning of a great change in the young prince. Spurred on by his success and admiring Fortinbras' decisive move against the Poles, Hamlet is determined to act and is therefore behaving in a more manly fashion according to the conventions of the time. At this point, he ceases to loathe women, perhaps because he is finally a man of action and no longer in need of the support of women in his life. On his return to Denmark, Hamlet channels his aggression into his plan to kill Claudius instead of using it to attack the women in his life. And now, at last, because Hamlet is less conflicted, he can view Ophelia as an icon of purity and feminine virtue. At her graveyard, Hamlet appears to forget his earlier attacks on the unfortunate young woman and claims to love her more than 40,000 brothers could do. Excuse me. Even in the manners of their deaths, the male and female characters differ. Polonius, Hamlet, and Laertes die by the sword. Ophelia drowns. Gertrude drinks poison. King Hamlet died a foul, strange, and unnatural death because he was poisoned. For men of the time, dying in combat possessed a certain honor. Of course, you guys watch like Vikings and like Game of Thrones, and you know what it means like when you die in battle. They honor that. So, for a soldier of renown to die in this unmanly way would have added another layer of outrage to Claudius' murder of his brother, and the ghost appears clad in the very armor he had on when he defeated the king of Norway in battle, and even though he did not die in his armor. Grant. Now, his manliness is linked to his physical strength and bravery. However, so he would want to be remembered this way. Claudius is wounded by Hamlet's sword, but he is not granted a manly death. He claims he is but hurt and calls for help, but Hamlet forces him to drink from the poisoned cup, and he dies. He stops him from dying an honorable death. Finally, it is worth comparing the different attitudes towards the men and women in various stage and film productions of Hamlet, of course. Now you've got like the 1990 film version of the play, the director makes it clear that Claudius and Gertrude were conducting an adulterous affair prior to the death of the king. There are many plays out there that contradict this view, and others say that this actually has happened and all that. Now you should all think about it, prepare your own essay about this topic if you're interested, and be ready for any question for when it comes to the treatment of men and women and how different, and this is very much likely to be there. It showed up a couple of times before, how women and men are treated differently. Anyway, guys, if you have any questions, let me know or drop them down in the comments below. Thank you very much and have a good day.